also require significant changes on the energy side if you want to implement it. I will not talk about REmap, but I want to show you this slide. These are cost trends for solar PV and for onshore wind. In orange is solar PV, in blue is onshore wind. And you see very significant cost declines, especially the orange dots, the solar PV. But also for onshore wind, costs continue to fall. And this graph stops in 2016, but if you look at the latest prices for this year, again, they're significantly lower than what we've seen previously. There was 2 weeks ago an announcement in Dubai. So they have now an offer for CSP for $9.5 cents per kilowatt hour. So it's the first time we see CSP below $10 cents. We see very low solar PV prices. Initially we said, well, it's Mexico, it's Abu Dhabi, places with nice sunshine. But if you see the latest prices in Europe, also remarkably low. And if you think that the sunshine in Mexico and Abu Dhabi is roughly twice what it is in Germany, then these prices are quite comparable. Low prices for onshore wind. I think Spain also very low prices recently. And of course, what we see for offshore wind is jaw-dropping with the price reductions we've seen there and the latest offers even. Where they say, well, we don't need any top-up anymore. We can do it at market prices. Now, to some extent, of course, that is a gamble, and all of this is projected for 2025, but at least it points very strongly in a direction of rapid cost declines. And on a global scale, of course, renewables account already since a couple of years now for more than half of the capacity additions. And especially solar PV has seen very rapid growth in last year, and we expect also, again, very rapid growth in this year. And it's not only limited to the power sector, but also in the end-use sectors, we can see an acceleration. So we've seen it for energy efficiency, now for the last 5 years, but also we see a pickup of some technologies which are relatively new. So electric vehicle park has doubled. I think what I read yesterday, the German car makers are scrambling because China is still talking about an 8% market share for electric vehicles next year for all manufacturers. We see very rapid cost declines for battery storage, 60% over the last 2.5 years. In Germany, the majority of new solar PV systems is now equipped with a battery, and the majority of these batteries is installed without any subsidy. They don't bother anymore to go through the bureaucratic hassle. So all of this, I mean, are indications that something is very rapidly changing. And it's not only Europe, we see that on a global scale. So that was point one, very rapid cost reductions. Second point is climate and its implications for energy policy. So that is something where we did a study together with the IEA for the G20 presidency. And the conclusion, both of the IEA and of IRENA, we did separate study. We compared in the end, and it turned out it was quite comparable, the findings. Conclusion was, it's technically feasible. It is challenging, but it is technically feasible to achieve a 70% CO2 emissions reduction globally by 2050 compared to 2015. There are additional investments needed, significant additional investments, but these are offset by energy efficiency gains, and they're offset by reduced health impacts and by reduced climate impacts. And the the benefits, if you do the total sum, exceed the costs by a factor 2 to 6. And there are additional jobs. Renewables jobs is around 26 million, but also if you subtract jobs you lose in fossil fuels, then it's still positive. And there is a 0.8% positive GDP impact. So, and I think I'll stop my slides here. It's just to make these 2 points that this cost is important, and the energy system implications of climate policy are important. We think that 90% of the emissions reduction can come from energy efficiency and renewables. That's the area, the renewables area here is in green and to some extent in purple. That is electrification with renewables. And the blue one at the bottom is efficiency. And the implications for energy supply are very profound. The share of renewables in primary energy would have to grow to about 2/3 of total energy supply. Now, the IEA number is slightly lower. They're somewhere between 40 and 50, but also a very significant growth. Now, of course, these are scenarios. This is analysis about the future. Nobody knows the future for sure. But the key message, consistent message, is that profound impacts of climate for the energy system and much higher energy efficiency and much higher renewables. And with that, I hand over to Luis Janeiro for the presentation of the European results.
Thank you. So could you start? Could you maybe press there? Okay. So indeed, I will present the draft results of the REmap analysis for the EU. I will skip these slides because this was about the approach, general approach on REmap. We will go straight to the REmap EU. So, as it was mentioned before by Paula and by Dolf, the goal of this analysis was to advise the EU on what are the options to achieve that 27% target, whether it's possible to go farther from that target, and also to put that in context of what is needed for the decarbonization of the EU. One distinguishing feature of the REmap process is that it's based on a strong consultative process, and this was also the case for the REmap EU. We started with the first workshop with member states in October 2016. That was followed by 3 in-depth sectoral webinars in which we looked at heating and cooling, power, and the transport sector. And then we presented preliminary results in a workshop in March this year in Brussels to the member states' representatives. We are now presenting for the first time publicly the draft results, and then we will have our final results on this on October 2017. In terms of how was this built, IRENA is already engaged with 10 EU member states in the context of the global REmap analysis. Those are the member states that are highlighted there in dark blue. And those constitute 73% of the EU energy use. For those, we work with the in-depth analysis of, under the REmap methodology. For the other 18 member states, we did quick scans to understand where the renewable potentials could lie. In terms of how we build the reference case for the countries that we have specific scenarios, we use those. And for those countries that we didn't have that information, we use the results of the reference scenario from primes that were released last year. And in terms of the other data, energy prices, cost, resource availability, etc., we use country-specific data. So these are the overall results, and this is probably what many of you came to see today. This shows the deployment of renewables on the horizontal axis, and on the vertical axis, it shows the relative cost of renewables versus the conventional technology. In the bottom of the graph, you see it in terms of the share, and also in the axis, you see it in absolute terms in petajoules. So back in 2010, we were in almost 13%. The latest figures that we have from Eurostat, we are now at 16.7% in 2015. And it seems that we are on a good trajectory to actually achieve the target in 2020 of 20%. Now, if we follow to the right the gray arrow, we would get to what we call the reference case, which is the situation in which we would be in 2030 if we keep the policies as they are now. And what we see in the rest of the graph is the REmap options that we have identified in the course of this project. The options that are below the zero line are those that are cheaper than the conventional alternative, measured in levelized cost of energy, and the options that are higher than the line are those that are more expensive in terms of LCOE than the conventional alternative. So you see that just with cost-effective options per se, we could get to 31% in 2030. If we would expand that to other options that are more costly, we could get to 33%. Also, if we would consider that the 30% target that is being proposed would also be realized, then this 33% would translate into a little higher, almost 34%. Now, zooming in a bit on the technologies that provide these additional potentials. The main two ones in the power sector, and no surprise here, are wind and solar PV. You have in the graph the 2010 installed power, and the other two columns are the 2030 installed power and the projected installed power under the reference scenario, and the one in the REmap scenario. And you see that there's very strong growth from 2010 to 2030, but we think that we can go farther than that growth for a number of reasons. And this is a case both for wind and for solar PV. And the reasons were already mentioned by Dolph and by Paula before. The evolution of the costs has been faster than expected in both technologies. The costs are already competitive today, so let alone in 2030. And also the technologies are improving in a way that are not only reducing the cost, but also increasing the potentials. For instance, with wind technologies that have higher capacity factors. This is a picture of the bioenergy that will be required to follow that path and achieve that 30% share in renewables. Again, the graph is structured with 2010, 2030 reference, and 2030 REmap. And you see that we need a substantial increase in bioenergy. At the same time, we are reducing the share of bioenergy in overall renewable energy consumption because the other alternatives are growing faster than bioenergy. One important note here is that if we would get to these levels of use of bioenergy, we would need to import a substantial amount of bioenergy from outside the EU. And these amounts we have estimated in somewhere between 10 to 40%, depending on what is the scenario of bioenergy potentials that we are considering. This is a picture of the transport sector. Again, the same structure in the slide, 2010, reference case in 2030, and REmap. Here we see that it could be possible to double the reference case, or almost double the reference case. You see the REmap option, or the REmap case, has more or less the same structure as the reference case. So the main carriers there would be biodiesel, electric vehicles, conventional ethanol, and also advanced ethanol. One important thing to mention here is in this case, we have already considered a very strong deployment of electric vehicles. So we are considering here that we would be with the equivalent of 40 million electric vehicles in 2030, which is a switch in the car industry, basically. So by 2030, the sales of electric vehicles will be larger than the sales of internal combustion vehicles. And despite that, we still need biofuels to keep progressing in the decarbonization of the transport sector. These are the results per member state, and as you see, there's a big difference. And of course, the big difference, they reflect the different starting point of 2020, but also differences in resource potentials, differences in the economic case for renewables in the different countries, and also differences in the barriers that affect these potentials. We also looked at the effect of our REmap case, the effect that our REmap case would have in the power sector. Of course, if we reach 33% of renewables, that means that we will have a very high share of renewables in the power sector. In our case, we arrived to a 57% overall in the power sector and 34% of variable renewables. As you see more or less from the graph, we put this together in a power system dispatch model, and we analyze the impacts of these variable renewables in the power system. And what we observe is there's considerable interconnection congestion, although it's not substantially different from the reference case. And on the other hand, we see that the curtailment can be kept at reasonable levels. So for the EU as a whole, it would be 0.6%, although there are some cases of specific countries that can have higher levels because of their specific nature of their power system. So the conclusion of this is that the REmap case is feasible from a power system perspective with the infrastructure that exists today and the infrastructure that is already planned without large investments in storage or other, let's say, structural changes. In terms of the effect of REmap case in the greenhouse gas emissions, we show here the emissions in 1990, the emissions in 2010, and the 40% greenhouse gas reduction target in 2030. In the reference case, there will be already very strong reductions, but the REmap case would bring this further with 450 megatons additional. This would bring almost the energy sector emissions close to reaching the 40% target, and this is before energy efficiency, fuel switch, and other mitigation measures. So the message here is renewables bring Europe close to the 40% target and leaving room for other alternatives to go farther. In terms of the economic impacts, the deployment of all the options that we showed before would require an additional investment of roughly 400 billion compared to the reference scenario. And these investments would trigger savings for an amount of 27 billion a year for the energy system by 2030. And this is just on a cost-benefit analysis base without taking into account the cost of externalities. If we would take those externalities into account, the savings would amount to a much larger number, so between 50 and 120 billion by the year 2030. So to conclude, the analysis of REmap EU identified cost-effective potentials that go beyond the proposed 27% target. And the underlying reasons for that were already mentioned before. The costs have decreased faster than expected, and the potentials also are expanding at the same time. The implementation of the identified REmap options would result in a 33.1% share of renewables in 2030. That would be a 33.9% if we would consider that at the same time we are achieving the proposed 30% energy efficiency target. And this is, I would say, a low-end estimate of what is possible out there, because the nature of this analysis is bottom-up. So there are possibly other cost-effective potentials that we did not unveil with the quick scans in the member states that were not analyzed in this case. There could also be faster technology improvements as offshore surprises as in the last couple of years. And also, if we could consider appropriately the cost of externalities, then the range of cost-effective measures would largely increase. So with this, I conclude. I just wanted to share a few ideas of further possible work that we could do for the EU. One of them is obviously expanding the member state coverage. Other could be expanding the scope of the analysis to 2040 so that we can be in line with the new energy and climate plans. And also we think it could be beneficial to have regional REmap workshops in which we could refine the results that we have obtained through this process, but also that could serve to facilitate member state cooperation to accelerate the deployment of renewables. And with this, I hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Luis. So in summary, 25% with business as usual. So business as usual is not enough. We need additional policies. 31% cost-effective potential. And we found if you just look at the economics, if you also consider the external effects, then we get to 34%. So high numbers. And with that, I would like to call upon the panelists. Can you please join me here on the podium? So from the left to the right, we have Claude Turmes, Member of European Parliament, Group of the Greens European Free Alliance. We have Tudor Toncea, who is the Energy Attaché of the Ministry of Energy of Romania. You know Paula. We have Andrzej Kazimierski, who is the Director of Renewable Energy Department, Ministry of Energy of Poland, and Uwe Schröder-Selbach, who is the Energy Attaché for the Permanent Representation of Germany to the EU. Welcome very much to all of you. Thank you for joining us here. And let me start from the far side with Claude. You heard these findings. So question to you, is the proposed 27% renewables target ambitious enough?
I'm disappointed because I will table an amendment of 45% next week, so it's only calling for 33. So there seems to be still some room for upwards. And be aware, when I discussed with Felix Mattes, who is doing the scenario for us, and he's one of, I think, in Germany he has run the official scenarios also of the German ministry. At the beginning I said to him, Felix, are we beyond Gut und Böse, or beyond, I don't know how I can translate this in English. And he said to me, when you really take 2050 getting to zero serious, and when you really take the carbon budget which is left for Europe serious, then we are more speaking about a magnitude of 40-45. But having said that, I think I'm quite pleased by what Irina is presenting today, because it is roughly what each and every expert tells me, that if you would take the Commission scenario and you would take the figures, the real figures and not the figures which unfortunately were in, plus taking out what I would call the Jostel-Beke break factor, which is basically the DG Klima not allowing modeling which goes beyond 40%. I think you have to understand all modeling in Commission was done. First they fixed the 40%, and then they tuned or fine-tuned, or however some would say you manipulate the figures in a way that it's impossible to get beyond the 40%, which is absurd in a world where we know that we have to move faster. So having Irina, who is not a green grassroots, but who is an international, World International Renewable Organization, the official, so now I have the label or the go from Mr. Adnan. Greetings to him down it's also hot in Abu Dhabi, probably. So now when I go out and I say 27 is desperately too low, I have the official logo from Mr. Adnan to say that. And we will have in the Parliament, so next week we table amendments. What you are proposing is very close to what Blanco Lopez, the rapporteur, is coming forward, so 35%. There will be some groups like mine who are more basically on the 1.5 or let's say getting to 0, who are higher. But the figures which have come to the table today will help us. And then I have probably 1 or 2 questions. Why is Ireland and Poland grid constrained? Is it because, for example, Poland has not invested a lot of money despite the billions of structural funds into the upgrading of their grid? Is that the problem? And tomorrow I'm organizing a workshop in the Irish Parliament, and we will advocate tomorrow that Ireland needs, also because Britain is drifting to Texas, we need a cable from Ireland to France to have a connection, a direct connection to the continent. And I met the French transmission system operator last week, and they say to me, if that cable is there, then Ireland can have a much bigger volume of wind which can be integrated into the Irish system, plus at certain moments exported to the continent. So that would be my 2 technical questions which pop up to my mind. But thank you very much for this really well-researched piece of scientific background, which will help us, I think, to objectivize the discussion. And then, of course, it's probably great for a country like Romania to see that you are such a big winner of the energy transition. Huh?
Okay, thank you very much for that. So, Parliament view 35% and perhaps even 45%.
We have also, we are integrating 40% energy efficiency. I don't know what was your basis for energy efficiency.
30%.
30%, yeah. So, good. Our is 40% energy efficiency, 45% renewables, which then in volume is not so far away from what you are doing. Yeah.
Okay, very good. So ambitious numbers, but implementation is of course always the challenge. So let's move to the countries who will have to make this happen. And let's start with Romania. Tudor, what do you think of this 27% or even much more?
Okay, so first of all, Romania doesn't have yet an official negotiating target, so I'll come back to you later with that. However, what we think is very important is to take into the consideration with regards to implementation the local issues. Basically, us in Romania, we, being a border country of the EU, we have energy security issue which we always have to be careful. And also in the region, we are a provider of energy security. Usually when we have issues with grid stability or not enough energy, that's when the other countries around us don't have as well. And so energy security is definitely an issue for us. We are able to handle it very well because we have lots of natural resources, fossil fuels, coal. Sorry for that.
No, you have the best wind resource outside Scotland. No, that's what all statistics show us. Huh? I don't know if you have the best wind resource. I would say you are at least top 5 in Europe when it comes to wind.
I'm not aware of those figures. We are doing really well with the wind, though. I know that. So we have also nuclear uranium. We have nuclear power. We also have large hydropower. And with that in mind, that large hydropower allowed us to cope really well when a lot of variable renewable energy entered the market. Well, not really well, but better with regards to implementation, again, better maybe than other countries. So we always have to keep in mind the energy security issue, the price of the energy, and when Romania has a particular issue with extreme temperatures, basically the peak energy demand during the winter is about 50% higher than the average in the average. So this is an issue we have to cope with. And when you can't rely always on variable renewable energy, so that's when the other technologies go in and supply the energy. Ministry of Energy will work on its next strategy. It's working on its next strategy for 2030. With this in mind, with the security issue in mind, with the energy price, we strive for a balanced mix in the next years until 2000 years. We want a neutral technological neutrality strategy, so we keep all the options on the table. We haven't decided yet what we're going to do. Like I said before, so the local issues is probably for each country, and for each country has its own specific issues. About the renewable energy in Romania, especially power. So in 2014, according to our statistics, we were above 2-something% above our renewable energy target. From this point of view, it was very successful. However, working on the Ministry of Energy, you see all the things behind it, and not everything is so worked very well. So basically, our law was a green we passed a law which enabled a green certificate market, which those green certificates were issued to the producers, which were selling to the suppliers, which were passing on the price to the consumers. So it was very, very popular. We had 2 times our peak energy demand almost, requests for accreditation at some point, roughly. So, in just a few years, so basically in 2014, half of the peak, there was half of the peak demand was installed in no, so there was a 50% renewable energy capacity, which no, it was installed in renewable energy capacity, which represented 50% out of the peak demand capacity, peak demand. So that's a lot. We were able to integrate into the market very well, as I said, because of the large hydropower plants. However, then the issues arise because of the very successful law. So we got our target. However, the consumer had to pay for these green certificates. So the way the system works is basically the national regulatory agency, together with the Ministry of Energy, propose each year a quota. And at some point, that quota was too high in order to absorb all the green certificates, was too high, so we couldn't allow for all the green certificates to be absorbed by the market. So that's when all the associations from wind, solar, hydro, small hydro started to ask the Ministry of Energy and the government what is going to do about this situation, because it can go on, and some of them might go bankrupt, which will endanger basically our target for 2020. So with this in mind, we needed about a year to pass a new law in order to cope with all their issues. It was a very long process. So what we changed, basically, we instead of allow all the green certificates market to be bought when they were issued, the year they were issued, what we did was allow them to be uniformly distributed until 2031. So most of the stakeholders involved, stakeholders, I mean consumer associations as well, not only the association from wind power generation or solar power or the others, were more or less happy about it. Not all of them, but it was a good compromise. And this came through this year. And I would say that there are some lessons learned here. One of the things that happened that
the first lesson is that you will never do again a contract with a consultancy who consulted to do this system. Is that a consequence?
No. No, actually, the consultant helped us to
fix it. But I think green certificate systems, it's really not an easy system to fix them.
It's not easy.
Yeah, and everybody,
like I said,
I think you have a lot of volatilities. You kind of, I think it's. I was always amazed that you went for that system. Good, but.
Well, now it's closed. You can't go. We just. So it's over.
Okay, but if I try to summarize what you're saying, you say that in fact there was a huge supply, so it was very popular to install renewables. There was a strong response.
Yes.
But you had problems in your policy framework. That was the main challenge.
Yes, we had problems with the policy framework. One of the problems was the dynamic of the market. Basically, solar power costs dropped and so there was a lot more influx of this type of energy. The biomass didn't go as well as projected in our national plan, which biomass was supposed to help the supply stability. So one of the lessons learned is you need the institutions basically can keep up with the dynamic of the market. So you need you need to have key indicators fast, which they are always and continuously supervised, so you can fast react to the market changes.
Okay. Okay, so it's a policy issue.
It's
really a policy issue. That's good. Very good. Thank you very much for that. Now let's move to the two coal countries.
The two coal countries. Yes. Yes. Good afternoon.
Cold by the way, that Poland in coal.
Our big brother.
So let's start with Poland. I mean, it's well known that Poland has been critical on the renewables perspective in Europe. You heard the presentation, so we say the costs are coming down tremendously. Are you now convinced? Is this new, or was this already part of your considerations?
Well, who said we are critical about renewables?
Okay.
Who said that? Well, generally speaking about the policy, energy policy, we are sticking to the resources which are local instead of importing. Which means coal, of course, and wind, and water, and waste available locally. Biomass means renewables. They are local. I mean, we are against importing biomass, totally. That's something, well, sort of disaster from our point of view, at least. Same with biodiesel imported from another side of the globe. So we are not against renewable. First of all, thank you, Irene, to use mathematics and to calculate it, because, well, the main thing, energy is not about ideology, it's not a religion, it's about technology and about the business. So it's about calculating figures and spreadsheets and just thinking. Well, what I strongly believe, I trust renewables in the future. I mean, I'm not good in believing, but I trust renewables. So I'm sure renewables will be market ready soon. So that's an important issue in terms of cost you presented here. That's the right path. Speaking about the policy, I will come back at the very end to the figures and to this 27 issue. Well, In the winter package, we see much more important challenges than just figures, just achieving a goal, whatever goal is. Because if we set up the goal and we decide to achieve it, whatever is the goal, it's just getting money from energy users and give it to investors to invest. Well, that seems a bit not reasonable long term as a policy. It is disturbing the market. So the most important challenge we see there is the what I said, market readiness of renewables. Make them able to fight on the market without any support long term. I'm not saying immediately. And when I'm speaking about renewables, I'm not speaking only about wind and PV. I'm speaking also about biomass, biogas production, waste to energy. That's a very, very important issue. Again, when we are speaking about CO2 target, the answer is not necessarily renewables. I mean, nuclear power is also the answer there. But when we are speaking about cleaning, getting rid of methane, it's much more important. And that's the waste to energy production. So that's something which really cleans environment, I mean local environment. So another important issue in the winter package is the mentioning, but for us it's a sort of a big part of the strategy, mentioning about local energy communities to build. We built a long-term strategy on the local energy communities because we believe with the target of being energy balanced from both sides. I mean, demand and production, or whatever. I mean, if the production is not strong enough, they can reduce demand. That's okay. I mean, it's perfect. It enables, it frees the part of the grid, enables the grid to be more flexible for the whole country. So that's also, it's why it's important. Of course, it's a bit more expensive, but brings several benefits. Also for, not only for the local community in terms of air pollution, getting rid of air pollution and so on, but also for, we found also for DSO, because it brings some local security, energy security and energy quality, which enables them, DSO, to avoid some penalties. So also DSO are, well, I would say quite ready at the moment. We are working on it to decrease the prices for such energy clusters. We call that entity energy cluster. Define them quite open, but during last year it happened, well, to start around 60 energy clusters in the very beginning status. Some of them are already somehow mature, but with the strategy, with the local strategy, locally adapted energy mix and the vision for energy management. So that's something we believe it's a long term, it's much more challenging, but much more efficient in terms of renewables, to make them, to find them strong position on the market, to let them fight with any other sort of energy, because that's our sources of energy which are locally available.
And the other sources of energy would pay for their pollution or not? Because I think I'm all in the favor of a market, but if coal has externalities because it's polluting, it's doing smog, it's polluting climate. So, but you have a policy where you don't want the market to play on coal because you are against ETS and against, you are giving free allocation to your coal power plants. So coal is not exposed to market, and then you have renewables exposed to market. I think you have to choose. or you are in favor of market, but then you should support the Czech amendment.
Sorry, I didn't interrupt you. So let me interrupt you because you interrupt me. Sorry, you should check.
I just want to get you
the
into
numbers.
a real market economy.
Yeah, it's not the place and the time, but you should probably check the figures and the facts about. But it's not. Well, going this way, but in matter of fact, if you should build the coal, well, whatever, gas, let's stick to your favorite gas. We don't need gas because we import at the moment gas from our, well, from our neighbor, okay? Okay, that's it. I mean, that's sometimes it's a problem. Yesterday it was a problem. Exactly. So we are not basing our philosophy on gas import. And if you need to build a power plant to back up wind, because you cannot just build wind. Speaking about interconnector, I know this answer. We had quite strong interconnectors with our neighbors. We switched them off. I mean, you switched one, we switched another. We had two because of the problem with grid, which was between you and Austria, as far as I remember. The problem, the energy went directly to us, stopping our grid management. Well, I'm saying Europe is not technically ready to go, at the moment, it's not technically ready to go to build heavy interconnector, and is not business ready because there are totally different markets in the neighborhood. Well, at the moment, market is totally different energy market between Poland and Germany, Poland and Lithuania as well. Of course, interconnection should be increased. Long term should be built, and the stability should be built this way. But at the moment, it's not feasible, and that's the answer. As opposite, local demand and production management will be something which is stabilizing the system, and that's the answer. We can see also in the winter package very strong point, which is very important for us point, which is heating. Using renewables in heating, because we need heating. We are quite cold country, same as you. Well, you have one of the longest lines in Europe. We are on the third place in terms of infrastructure for heating, and we should improve our heating system. So that's a great opportunity for renewables as well. And we, according to our plans and our ideas, how we understand winter package, especially we are accepting strongly RED II directive. So it's why I ask, who said that about we are against? We are supporting almost everything, and some of our remarks went to second revision. Well, yeah, thank you. So speaking about the target of 27, we think it's reasonable. It's quite ambitious, because countries are different. And, well, according to your analysis, I can agree that for Poland, it's more or less the same we are thinking about. So it's achievable. We prefer to be more conservative and concentrate mostly on the system, on building all this interconnection, regional markets, which will be very difficult and probably even to accept that first attempt will fail, and to give us, all of us, the time to develop infrastructure in which it will be no limits for increasing renewables. Well, of course, storage systems will change the paradigm immediately. We are implementing, well, about the support system, we had the same problem, well, similar problem with green certificates, as everybody probably, wrong system. And after that, we went to auctions, which will enable us to achieve the proper energy mix, including hybrid installation. We are planning when wind can go together with some biomass or biogas production to stabilize it just a bit, to be more attractive for the system. And that's it.
Okay.
Well, so.
Very good.
Thank you.
If I try to summarize, you say that in principle you are in favor of renewables as long as they're cost effective.
Yeah.
They should contribute to energy security. They should contribute to local or sub-regional development.
Yeah.
You have an issue on interconnectors, and that needs to be resolved.
Yeah.
There should be more attention for heat also, not only electricity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
the numbers we showed from the REmap analysis are roughly in line with your thinking.
For Poland, yes.
For Poland. Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
The rest, I don't know. I can't check it.
Of course, yeah. Thank you for that. Now, I teased you a little bit on Germany. Of course, Germany has made great progress on renewables, but has in recent years not made such great progress on CO2. Two reasons for that. One is the lack of a European carbon price. Second one is issues around transport sector. Commissioner Oettinger today proposed, let's have a European carbon tax, and that will solve many problems at once.
That is complete nonsense. And Mr. Oettinger should know that. It's in unanimity. It was proposed in 91. It was we were 12. Thatcher vetoed it. This is one of the biggest nonsense you can propose. And if you compose it as a commissioner, that shows that you don't even know what is in the EU treaties. It's complete nonsense. A CO2 tax in Europe cannot happen because it's under unanimity. So, come on.
Okay. So,
and if somebody can tweet that for me.
One solution is gone. What do you see then as the solution?
Well, where shall I start? Should I answer that question first? I'm not sure. You're talking to the energy attaché. You're not talking to the climate attaché of Germany, okay? Of course, we've also been discussing several means to bring up prices for CO2 within the ETS. We've also been discussing means, eco-tax, and all these things. We've even implemented some of them. Now, if today's fuel prices are too low, they do not contribute to the necessary signals, and they do not internalize external cost adequately, then these are things that we must look into within that framework. But what we are looking into within the renewables framework, I think, is a bit of a different thing. This has to contribute very clearly, but the one thing will not replace the other. And I think this has always been our position, that apart from the framework for carbon and greenhouse gas reduction, we still do need frameworks for the uptake of renewables on the one hand, and for the improvement of efficiency on the other hand. Now, I've heard some things, and I'll come back to them in due course, and I think what I should maybe answer first, or what we should look into first, is the question of target ambition, because that's what this panel is actually about. And in preparation for this, I've been looking into a number of studies and recent developments, and then there's your contribution. And I think it's very clear that a lot has happened in between the year of the European Council 2014 with its target ambition and today. And a lot had happened earlier on, so it was already obvious at the time. But since then, I think these developments with respect to cost effectiveness have even speeded up a lot. I think Claude will clearly agree to that. To make one point clear, I'm not here to question the European Council compromise of 2014. Ambition-wise, it's well known that Germany at the time was very much in favor of a more ambitious and more binding target architecture. But that was yesterday's battle, and it ended with, in my view, a balanced compromise, meaning our task is now to come up with a meaningful implementing framework, which means if in the course of the further deliberations on this implementing framework, which is the clean energy package, it turns out that there is some appetite to move ahead in the direction to which cost efficiency points, and this direction is more renewables ambition. We'll not close a door on that, but it's not the key aspect that's on the table of the Council at this point in time. We have a decision which dates back to 2014, and let's take it from there at this point in time. So if you look at the cost effects that we've observed, especially in this year, wind onshore, wind offshore, PV, this has come down a lot lower and much faster than any one of us had expected and in earlier projections. Renewables today are at par with regard to investment cost per megawatt. With respect to marginal O&M cost per megawatt hour, they're near to zero, meaning the business case is actually clear. And I was interested to hear that Poland is preferring this from a business case perspective, and I think we can take it from there. So obviously, also the challenge has shifted. Years ago, I do remember in an earlier life, I was negotiating within Germany, within the Ministry of Economic Affairs, and we were on the other side of the table with the people from the Ministry of Environment, and we were negotiating, and the concern was how shall we limit the differential cost of renewable support in our system? How can we limit that effect? And you know that the renewable surcharge is pretty high in Germany. Now, but for a number of years, as we see it as of today, new installations under EEG, the renewable scheme in Germany, have only contributed marginally to raising the EEG surcharge, the levy on consumers. And this means that and since we've introduced tendering, these results have continued. So you've been reading about that, zero cost, zero subsidy bids for offshore wind, onshore between 5 and 6 euro cents, PV likewise. So in this, if we look at this, our concerns very clearly shift to something entirely different, and that is to create the market environment that we actually need, that is fit to take up these renewable quantities that are, in our view, cost effective. This will be the task that we need to look into. This has been taken good care of by the Commission when it presented its clean energy package, good care of with the proposals on market design. We need to take very good care of this in the Council legislative procedure, as does the Parliament. What we need to do is to arrive at a flexible, optimized, responsive, cross-regional, and short-term market environment. And that will look a bit different than the market environment that we see today. It will be even more coupled. And when you said that there are these big differences between markets, well, I think this is the chance that we have. We've done it under the third market package, internal market package with market coupling. And we need to go the further step to integrate short-term markets even more, and obviously interconnections. So what does this mean? As part of the clean energy package, there's also this issue about how do we create investor certainty and confidence. Market actors need stability of the framework. That's critical if the success story that we've seen is supposed to continue. And that means that we need plans called NECPs, National Energy and Climate Plans, with clear targets, with clear trajectories, with measures also on a sectorial level, with predictability and flexibility. These have to respect, very obviously, member states' sovereign rights on their energy mix. This has to be accompanied by a monitoring mechanism that helps us keep account and keep track of target achievement. This is discussed in the governance proposal. And in our view, if we make all these choices right, the stepwise transition to renewables will indeed become a reality. I think discussing percentage points may then be not in the foreground, but maybe step back a little bit. But we'll move into that direction, and we'll have those benefits, all of those benefits that are also important for Poland, for Romania, reducing import dependency, because not only coal reduces import dependency, renewables do that to the highest degree, to create intelligent and stable energy systems, which is something that we have the chance today to do. To move ahead EU-wise, being as the most innovative and leading global energy technology region. Jobs and growth, extremely important. This is one of the new sectors, our experience, where we have the fastest and largest job growth ever. And of course, cost efficiency, but we have to get things right for that. So I hope that answers some of the questions.
Okay. Yeah. If I summarize, you say the economics are there. We need to pay more attention to systems integration, so sector coupling, but also market integration within Europe. We need to have clear roadmaps, not only of an ultimate goal, but also how we want to get there. And the discussion
accompanied by a monitoring system.
Monitoring system, and the discussion about targets is kind of a secondary discussion. We should
not entirely, but it's this framework with regard to seeing renewables move to cost efficiency. The question of target level may not be the most important, but creating the market environment will be the most important.
Yeah, but I think I disagree on that, because if you don't have a high enough target for renewables, you will not be able to phase out coal. And the next decade is the decisive decade on climate change, because it's a volume problem. So you need relevant, you need to bring relevant quantities of new electricity into the system in order also to show, look, we can take rapidly out a large amount of coal. And I think in that sense, because the problem of the Commission's proposal is that there's a huge amount of coal remains in the system because of this too low renewables and too low efficiency. But the good news is that Germany, I think it will equally, will win the election. I think the next German government will be much more serious about phasing out coal. And but I think we have always to be very careful. It's not the German problem that coal is running. It's the weak ETS. Because Germany had a lot of gas running. I was in France last week. In France, it's very. They have a complete vision what happened in Germany is you went out of nuclear and then you went up with coal. And they don't understand that that is true when you have a first look, but the real look behind is when you went out of nuclear was also the moment when the carbon price at EU level went to 5. And that is the reason why coal turns. And the gas has been pushed out of the market. That explains the suboptimal changes, not only in Germany, but also in other countries. And, but just to come back to that, Mr. Oettinger should know that the whole EU ETS was just done because institutionally it's impossible to get to a CO2 tax of any relevance in Europe because it's under unanimity. And therefore, European Commission imagined ETS because ETS is under another article of the treaty and is in qualified majority. It's the only, read my book, I have the whole story of that in my book. And where we can do something, if ETS is not getting strong enough, is carbon floor price. And that is something which is possible to do, and that is, in my eyes, also something which should be done because the ETS price signal will not be strong enough the next years. And that's something which could also be done after the next German elections. And that would bring basically 15-20 euro stable minimum carbon price, and that would even then make even better the case for renewables to be then closer to market.
It's always nice when Claude can speculate what next German governments will be doing. It's something that I am not supposed to do.
No, but
interesting to hear.
Look, if you would be here as a private person, you would subscribe or not?
Am I here as a private person? I don't know.
Paula, you've heard now these different views. What is your takeaway message?
Well, I appreciated many of the things I heard. Perhaps allow me to say a few things, okay, as a reaction. First of all, I don't think it's right to limit the impacts of renewables just in terms of reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, it's not only the climate impacts that renewables have. Right? It's very important. Renewables are essential if we want to honor our commitments in Paris, but it's not the only, let's say, advantage of renewables. Okay? There is a security of supply, and a representative from Poland said it clearly. There is the issue of diversifying imports. Local development is very much local. It's a way of democratization because citizens want to have a say on their energy, and this is a way to do it. So it's much more than that. There are much more social and economic benefits of renewables. Okay? So I think that if we look at the broad impacts, it's easier perhaps to start looking at renewables from a different angle, including in countries that are not traditional so much pro-renewables, let's say. Because once you see the other type of impacts, they also move. And I heard from you the importance that you give to renewable energy communities, the local level, and so on. So it is very important to add this. So and also the business is behind, the industrial development. I mean, we want to be leaders in renewables. In which sense? One way is really to reindustrialize the sector in Europe. And I think there are good ways of, good prospects in that regard. Second thing I'd like to say is, no doubt, targets are important. They have been the main issue in the policy that the EU has defined for itself for the 2020. And we have been copied by many, many countries outside Europe. So we have a double responsibility, not only inside, but also outside Europe. So they are important because they give the signal. They give the signal of the ambition. But they are not enough. They are not enough. Targets per se are important to give a signal, but they are not enough. And we have seen across Europe that they have not been enough. Because we have seen things in some countries which we wonder, well, then target was really not such a reliable policy tool. So we need more than that. And as I explained in my introduction, so we had to work within this framework established by the member states where no longer national binding targets, we want EU-level targets, a floor of 27, which we took religiously, is a floor. It's not a target. So even in your slides, you have to correct that. It's not a target. It's a minimum. So we appreciate very much, and I say it again, the study and the outcomes of the study because they can give confidence to countries like Poland, but also my country, Portugal, there are benefits you should look at, and there is a potential which is economically viable. So for the discussions that are upcoming for 2030. So it's important to have, beyond targets, a stable policy framework, concrete measures, no retroactivity. We need to give the enabling environment to secure the investments, so that the investment takes place, that people are not afraid of taking a decision today that they will regret tomorrow. So it's basically that. The technology costs are coming down. I mean, you showed that. It's an opportunity for Europe, I would say, to invest in this sector. I heard one thing about heating and cooling. Thank you very much. Because we tend to forget. We tend to concentrate always in the power sector, is the most visible. However, half of what we consume is in the heating and cooling sector. There is a huge potential there. And we try smoothly with our proposal. And I hope and I count with Poland in the discussions to be more ambitious than that, because it is an important action. So basically, I think that we have to take the cost reduction as an opportunity. We have learned many lessons from the current framework. We should apply the lessons learned. We have to look at the issues of cost effectiveness. I don't like that when people say, yeah, but renewables are very expensive. What are they expensive? What are you talking about very expensive? Because it remained in the minds of the people, all these amounts of subsidies that went to renewables. And today we are in a situation where they're becoming cost competitive. So, and they have to be more and more governed by market rules. And of course, with the necessary exemptions for small scale, for emerging technologies, and so on. But I think we need to expose also renewables to the market when they are ready for that, and allow this energy transition. I don't think there is any way out. We don't have anything else in Europe. What do we have as resources? Nothing else. Okay, coal, which we have a problem with coal, as we know. So the potential is really the renewables, alongside, of course, demand-side management and energy efficiency. These are the two main issues that I see. I think the Commission's proposals are criticized for low ambition. Some say it's too much. I think it is a very good basis for negotiating with the Parliament and with the Council. And we count on both sides to make it important and ambitious pieces of legislation. And again, just to conclude, because this is a responsibility that we have vis-à-vis the Europeans, but also outside Europe, because we have been a test case for renewables policy, for efficiency policy, and so the world is watching us. Thank you.
I'm surprised that neither the representative from Poland nor you, that you have raised the issue of the capital costs. And for example, Poland did a tender on PV last year. Result, 95 euro per megawatt hour. In the very same moment, there was a joint German-Danish tender, which came out with 55. And when you look to a map, and yesterday I was with one of the guys who runs modeling in Europe, you see that Poland has not only cheaper land than Denmark, but Poland has even slightly better solar conditions because you have less clouds than although you are not very much. So how do you explain that you have a tender in Denmark for 55, and then you have a tender for the same standard technology, because the panel standing in Denmark and in Poland will be exactly the same. Yes, it can partially be even the same. Why 40 euro per megawatt hour of difference? So that's a question, and the question to you is, why is the same Enercon onshore 3 megawatt wind turbine, why is the weighted average capital cost in Germany 3.5%? And in Romania, 10%. So you have, and I'm surprised. If I would be paid by the Romanian or by the Polish government, I would, on every round table in Brussels, I would say, why can Europe not organize for us what the World Bank and IMF has organized for Morocco. Why do you think is Morocco doing wind for 30 euro per megawatt hour? If they would have to do it on the capital markets under normal conditions, it would cost them double. It's only because the penalization of the financial markets, which Romania has and also Poland has compared to Germany and Denmark, because and that's the normal financial business, because World Bank and IMF did a de-risking fund for Morocco. And I'm calling since 1.5 years on Commission to use the Juncker FC fund plus NER, and there's money at Commission. Why don't we do now the Romanian renewable energy de-risking fund and the Polish renewable energy risk? Because what I want in Poland to happen now is, why don't you tender for a big 1,500 megawatt offshore wind? And then I would, because that is jobs in Poland, they will be built in Gdansk and in Gdynia. So it's probably the best job machine.
That's not exactly. I mean, I can explain you, because when we are asking investors about offshore, they are saying us it's very cheap. We don't need any support.
Oh.
On the other, almost.
Well, what is the power price?
On the other hand, when we are asking, and then how many Polish companies will be involved and how it influences the market and so on. Let's talk about the value chain. They're talking, and you want to involve Polish companies. Okay, it will cost you much more.
Why?
That's the answer. Well, that's the answer from investors. We are waiting for the good price for offshore and for good analysis, because at the moment we don't receive any analysis of the wind availability and so on, power availability. So it's up to them to...
but how can you know you don't do a tender? As long as you haven't done a tender,
we
you cannot
do a tender according to EU rules, auction rules, because we've got just 2 projects, and the minimum is 3 projects for auction to make it competitive. So the only way is the direct.
Sorry.
So it's sorry. I'm
was one project,
I'm not saying it's impossible. Don't say that.
No, it's because politically you don't want it.
No, it's not politically. It's just a GBR policy. But GBR. Well, that's something we can, of course, discuss with investors, and we can notify support for investors directly for every case separately. And that's absolutely possible. We discussed it with DG Comp already, so it's possible, feasible, but there are no ready projects at the moment. That's the answer.
And why is solar 40 euro per megawatt more expensive in Poland?
Well, that's a good question. That's a good question. It's why we did this first experiment auction. And, well, if banks cannot, decide to support such projects, we'll develop different projects. So, well, it's up to banks to finance it reasonably. But they should be convinced after. It's why we started with small auction, just to convince also all the market that it's feasible, possible. After all, somebody gets money, somebody gets contract, and something works. Because it was a mistrust of 8 years of act development. So,
sorry, I think I need to give you a brief chance to intervene on that. The level of WACC, weighted average capital cost, is very clearly a function of reliability, dedication of the government, of long-term target setting, of mechanisms that secure, that create investor certainty and planning security. So there is a good reason why WACC in Germany is at 3.5% for renewables projects and is at 10 to 15% for Romania or Poland.
Yeah.
There's a clear reason. So I think the government sends out messages, and these messages can be influenced to a certain degree.
With that, I would like to conclude this event. High level, I take away that there's a general support for the findings of the study. There's a genuine willingness to look more into renewables, and that its target setting is important, but there's a whole host of other factors that also need to be accounted for. I thank the panelists. I thank the audience. I apologize that I had no time left to offer you questions. If you have any questions, please ask the panelists directly. Thank you very much.